If I told you this Senna was playing top lane taking Predator, you might think he was stuck in Iron, but actually this is DEADEVEN, a master EUS player going top lane and taking this bizarre rune. You might think this is just another ranged top laner, but this rune and his weird build changes everything we know about top lane. Even weirder, this guy actually buys YOUMUUS GHOSTBLADE first item in season 13, and weirder than that, he buys a support item at 14 minutes, then sprinting at lightning speed towards enemies, easily reaching over 600 movement speed inside her mist. This pick is starting to look a lot more like Zeri than Senna. This is a whole new way to play the champion, simply outrunning death, and then turning around to burst the enemy. But first I have a special treat for all of the ARAM players watching, and also for off-meta fans. This week's sponsor Professor now has two highly requested new features. Number one, in ARAM you can see the win rates of each champion that's available, including the ones available for selection, letting you play to win, or get an even harder challenge. And of course Professor also selects the best runes for you automatically, so you can just chill and let it do the work for you. And if you're an off-meta fan, Professor also now has pretty much all of the off-meta builds from our videos built in, importing your runes and items into your in-game shop automatically. So if you want to play a crazy pick, you can just jump right in and start. But if you're really trying to climb this season, there is a much more important feature, summoner spell timers on the UI, letting you automatically track enemy summoners and get extra kills. Professor is completely safe to use, so why not join the 9.5 million other players using it? Because best of all, it's completely free, and you can download it now from my link in the description. Back to DEADEVEN, our Senna. He started League in season 10, and by season 11 he was a dedicated top laner, picking up all of the classics like Tryndamere, Irelia, and Senna. Senna support started as his backup pick when he couldn't play top. But on the 11th of July 2022, something unbelievable happened. He was on a hot streak with Senna support, and he didn't want to stop playing, but then he was autofilled to top lane, so he had a choice, return to his reliable picks, or try something new. He locked in Senna top, and decided on a Predator rune page and Ghost, two things that have incredible synergy with Senna's E, the mist that also gives her movement speed. Shockingly, it was instant success, winning 8 games in a row that day and being promoted to Diamond 2. Right away, he knew he discovered something, he just didn't know what. It took him a few more months of practicing the strategy, then hitting Master in February of season 13, staying there to this day. But we are all here to see how Predator Senna works, so let's get right to that. At level 1, Senna buys boots and refillable, immediately giving him Predator, also buying a sweeper and running to this middle bush. He is going for a level 1 invade, but importantly, he always waits till 40 seconds to invade, to make sure the enemies are out of base and ready to be caught. Sweeping as he leaves the bush to spot any wards, he walks through to blue, sticking right next to the wall to limit the enemy's sight lines. Taking W first for the CC, he wants to run right into an enemy, root them and try and get a kill, or at least burn all of their summoners. He doesn't use Predator immediately, as that would give away his invade. Instead, after this initial play, they stay around for more fights, so then he can use the Predator for the extra movement speed to try and find another enemy to catch. The great thing is that Senna's root is really long range, so with Predator on, he can cast it and then follow up very quickly, with her auto attacks giving Senna 10% of the target's maximum speed. And when you stack this on top of Senna's boots, she can really chase any champion down. On red side, she instead invades through bot lane into Tribush, ideally trying to find an AD carry or jungler to catch out. Now remember, these are late invades, so when they're done, Senna immediately needs to start running to top lane. Early laning is a vital part of this pick, so if you mess it up, you are not going to come back. Predator itself is actually terrible in lane. Our player almost never uses it, so Senna practically has no keystone. But that doesn't matter, because Predator is actually an investment that you're going to see pay off very soon, as mid-game is where this pick completely changes the game. But in lane, at level 1, Senna has her W, so she doesn't really have any pressure at all, and is forced to play very passive. It's a good thing if the enemy pushes, as that gives you the opportunity to keep the wave by your tower. At level 2, Senna takes her Q, and we can now see why he's playing top lane. Senna being top lane might sound bad, as she only has one champion to farm the mist stacks off compared to 2 in bot lane. However, our player believes that due to the matchups, it's actually much better. In top lane, around 90% of the time, Senna is playing against an immobile or at least low range top laner, and this lets Senna poke them so much more often than the ranged champions she would play against in bot lane. So because of this, Senna is able to farm a lot more mist stacks from the enemy champion, and this is super important, as mists are basically an extra resource for Senna, giving her attack damage, attack range, crit chance, and even lifesteal if she gets enough of them. Senna is only looking for short trades. Get in, get the stack, and get out. She needs to hit them twice with either an ability then an auto attack to collect the mist, or an auto attack and then a Q at long range to grab it. The enemy has a 6-second cooldown where they can't be collected from, so this is when she backs off. Minions also drop stacks of mist, which he can use his long-range Q to safely collect. Currently in the game, a Senna soul is worth about 44 gold if you get it from the enemy, thanks to the stats it gives you, or it's worth 52 gold if the soul drops from a minion, as it also gives you 8 gold when you pick it up. So either way, one of these stacks is worth more gold than any type of minion except for the cannon, so it's really worth prioritizing them. Since Senna is so squishy and low damage early on, his goal is to let the wave push in, playing slow and collecting CS as well as the mist. If Senna just collects XP, gold and the mist, she will win this lane. However, if Senna dies, the enemy wins the lane, so all of his plays are made based on staying alive and getting the resources. Level 3 you can take Q again. Your E is more of a safety tool in top lane for disengaging, whereas if you put 2 points in Q you have much higher early pressure, and more pressure means it's less likely for the enemy to all-in you. Then taking his E at level 4. This is where the risk of dive starts to get quite bad, especially because his Predator Keystone is still basically useless. Senna has 2 tools to fix this, having Flash if needed, but on a much lower cooldown, her Ghost, popping it just to get out of range if the enemy dives. You could also take Barrier to do the same thing, but the scaling is slightly worse. Once the threat is gone and the enemy has used their cooldowns, he can then start to chase them down, using the passive movement speed bonus from his auto attacks. He even rushes tier 2 boots as well to help him avoid these dives. Weirdly for him, it's much more effective to get out of range of the enemy than it is to buy damage to try and kill them, as your goal again is scaling. They are the ones who want to force fights. And if enemies are taking the risk to try and dive you or push past your tower, that's a good opportunity for your jungler or mid laner to come up for a free kill. You can see how hard it is for enemies to punish this pick without putting themselves at a huge risk. Now it is time for the real reason he takes Predator. At some time around 10 to 14 minutes, our player completely changes. This is roughly around 1 item, which is where Senna as a champion starts to get much weaker than the enemy top laner. The champion barely has any health, and doesn't do as much damage as a bruiser, so it would be way too risky to just stay in top lane. So our Senna buys Spectral Scythe, and swaps to mid lane, giving his mid laner top. It's a very weird time to buy a support item, and a very weird time to leave lane. So what is the secret? Well, he does this as the second dragon spawns, making sure he is there before it's up, and creating a player advantage to guarantee they get the objective. Our player knows that if he stayed in top lane, he would fall behind, lose tower, and die, so instead he starts using the Predator. Finally, he has a Keystone again, using it to help him roam, and as a setup tool for his route, which then lets him chase people down with auto attacks, and his goal is to pressure the rest of the map. So instead of being stuck in top lane, he creates plays, speeding in with the Predator, bursting someone with the lethality he's bought, and then can use Ghost or Flash to speed out again to safety. It's such a weird way to play the game, especially on a champion that isn't meant to be super mobile. And crazily, he even built YOUMUUS GHOSTBLADE first item for the movement speed active, and good components for early burst damage. With this on top of the tier 2 boots, Predator, the speed from his E, and the bonus speed from his auto attacks, he can easily hit 600 movement speed on a champion whose main weakness is meant to be her speed. From these unexpected fights, Senna's support item and the kill or assist gold is her main income, as well as the soul she picks up from each enemy. This is a really cheap build focused on being fast and having a lot of burst damage for squishy enemies, more like an assassin than an AD carry. This is a great time to pick up second Rift Herald and use your speed up to set up picks around it. Since he's now playing mid lane and mostly playing to make plays and look around the map, he has lots of time to look for good ults to snipe the other side of the map and turn fights around. The crazy thing is that lots of these clips look like I've sped them up, but it's actually just Senna who's faster than we expect. This is their normal speed. And so when he reaches team fights, he is more similar to a Zeri than a Senna, speeding around the fight with all these movement speed buffs. He can always get into a good position and avoid danger with the speed, no dashes necessary. Senna should usually be an easy target for anyone to kill, but now she just outruns their skill shots. It's amazing. Players like this Zac miss their normal engage onto her because no one has ever seen a Senna move this fast. It's almost like enemies are playing against a newly released champion. They don't know what to do about it. And when Senna isn't focused, with this build she's still a great long-range AD carry, using the lethality damage to chunk enemies, then buying Eclipse for the damage and more movement speed. This build is so much more self-reliant than most AD carries, and that's why I think it works so well in this roaming style. He has now outscaled most top laners, reaching over 700 range, meaning she can deal even safer damage. As long as you have a frontline champion on your team to protect all of your DPS threats, you should now be able to win any fight. And let's not forget, late game you'll have an extra fully stacked support item, giving you the extra gold from it and all of the wards. So Senna's team should never be caught out by anything, and this extra vision just makes it so much easier to set up front to back team fights, which is where AD carries are best. We never see these double support items in any pro league, and it's quite rare even in high elo solo queue, but this adaptation is a game changer. To rate this pick, I actually talked to a challenger Senna main named the Mist Collector, and as you can see by his name, he's very dedicated to his champion. He was super happy to test out top lane Senna for us in Challenger. I expected him to just play a little bit, but he tested it for a few weeks. At first he was very doubtful, due to Senna having one of, if not the lowest, base health in the game, so going top lane against bruisers seemed impossible. And after his first few games, he was starting to worry a little about getting banned, due to the huge death numbers he was racking up. But after picking up the more passive playstyle from our player, he adapted, and over time he realised that if you play well on this pick, with good positioning you become literally unkillable in top lane. If enemies don't adapt and learn how to counter you right away, then your lane is just won. And so in his opinion, it's certainly playable in Challenger, and might even be a viable counter pick to some top laners. I should mention, this pick is definitely not easy, and some matchups are practically impossible. In fact, from level 1, through laning, and especially mid game, there are so many times that if you die once, your game is pretty much over. It's harder than any top lane roaming strategy we've covered before, and probably harder than any laning strategy as well. But that doesn't mean it's bad. In fact, when it works, it's quite good. And it's so impressive how this player has proven that it's viable, reaching Master with a really great win rate. To be honest, in Season 13, top lane doesn't have that much impact on the game, but that is never the case with this player. Even the bonus vision you get alone is potentially a game-winning idea, and I'm sure it would be viable on lots of other AD top laners. The build and the runes are probably the most interesting part of this pick, always starting boots for the Predator invade, and rushing swiftness boots every game to make his laning as safe as possible. His most common first item is Serrated Dirk, and then depending on the amount of gold he has when the second dragon spawns, which he wants to roam to, he buys either Spectral Scythe or YOUMUUS Ghostblade if he can afford it. This is where the build swaps from being a top laner to a mid laner, and speeding around the map collecting gold. Eclipse next as his mythic for the speed and the burst damage, usually buying Executioners for the anti-heal, into Rapid Fire Cannon due to the crit and of course more speed. Edge of Night and Mortal Reminder are good final items, but he often wins before he gets them. His runes are the craziest part, with the Predator page, having Cheap Shot to work with his W root, and then stacking runes to help him snowball. Of course his secondary is just empowering his speed even more, taking Ghost and Flash to help with the safety in lane, as well as to really speed up his mid-game plays to guarantee no one can outrun him. Our Senna has nothing to promote, but if you do want more Senna content, then I will link the Mist Collector's Twitch, as he was a huge help with this video. And if you want to win more League games, please also download our sponsor Porofessor from the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching.